Hi guys. This week we're doing week 7 and covering Italian Americans. My name is Jade Taylor.
My name is Jordan Kearns.
I'm Kaylin McMullen.
And I'm Kari Tokiyama.
Okay, so the article Gli Italiani nel Mondo, translated to Italy's workers around the world by Donna Gabaccio, gives a brief history of Italian workers and their migration decisions in the pursuit of work. The article begins by explaining why about 16 million Italians left their country to find jobs in other parts of the world. In 1861, Italy had become a new nation, and like many establishing countries, had many aspects of its social and economic state that were weak and unstable, with the rapidly growing population. Additionally, as trade and commerce moved further from the Mediterranean, Italy's position as an early center of civilization declined, despite their newfound political independence. Rather than becoming more economically prosperous as a nation, they established themselves as prominent migrant workers and were known globally to have an immense amount of people dispersing from Italy, at least temporarily, to find work. The impressive number of migrants, both empirically and proportionally to other nations, was astounding, as Italians scattered more widely than most other European and Asian migrants of the era. Though the majority of workers seeked unskilled, more peasant-level work, 3 shifts on a global scale actually opened up more opportunity and further encouraged migration out of Italy. The first was the emancipation of African origin slaves, which required industries once dependent upon free labor to resource its workers. The second had to do with the huge, new, but sparsely populated national states in the Americas that were being formed surrounding this concept of to govern is to populate, which inherently demanded workers, a byproduct of new settlers. Lastly, the rise of industrial capital needed labor, as mining of iron and coal demanded for new factories, canals, railroads, and tunnels to be built. Unlike other migrants looking for work at the time, Italians generally avoided indentured work and the United States. Rather, Northern Italians preferred European and Latin American destinations, and those who did go to the US didn't settle the frontiers or work the factories, but stuck to seasonal work on the East Coast, constructing cities and urban infrastructure. By the 20th century, shoe factories and garment shops had provided some employment for small numbers of Italian men and women in America, but it was really just isolated to New York and Chicago. Other places Italians traveled include Canada, where a large workforce went to help the construction of the Canadian Pacific Railroad, Australia in sugar plantations and mines, though few numbers went here because of the long and expensive journey, and finally Latin America, where work was very plentiful to a large proportion of Italian migrants. Here, Italians harvested grain on the pampas of Argentina, worked Brazil's coffee plantations, transformed artisanal shops into small manufacturers of garments, leather, textiles, machine goods. They became sharecroppers, and some even acted as investors and businessmen in the new urban industries of Buenos Aires, Rosario, and Sao Paulo. In fact, in Buenos Aires, the economy would later be called an ethnic or enclave economy, where both capital and labor emerged from one single migrant community, which were the Italians. Though work was also found in Europe, Italians mostly found seasonal work in construction or other marginal jobs under the control of contractors or bosses. Unfortunately, as jobs in the urban districts were already occupied by Europeans and sufficiently developed, migrant mobility in the job market was low, blocking migrant mobility. Overall, the article reflects on the widespread contribution Italians made around the globe in building productive economies. The article really illustrates all the hard work families in Italy went through to survive the difficult times in their home country, only to come back still as a people, or as at least Italian Americans who, with the combination of the hard work done by women and children at home and the men's wages earned through work abroad, were able to establish.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the short film we watched for this week's material. Italian American is a 1974 documentary directed by Martin Scorsese, featuring his parents, Catherine and Charles Scorsese. Martin Scorsese is an Italian American Academy Awarded filmmaker with many well-known and well-liked films such as The Wolf of Wall Street, Shutter Island, The Irishman, and the list continues on and on. Italian American is included in his collection of Scorsese short films where his parents cover the hardships of Italian immigration, life in America as an Italian American, and family, all while Catherine instructs how to make her homemade meatballs and sauce. The close family ties within this short film are made very evident right off the bat, as Catherine explains learning to cook authentic Italian meals from her mother and her mother-in-law, and expresses strong feelings about the rights and wrongs of Italian cooking. Catherine and Charles share their experiences touring Italy for 2 weeks while visiting family. Pictures are shown of women preparing delicious food for big family meals, just as we had seen during the Italian food unit during week 3. Connections can also be made to the book we're reading, Umbertina, where Charles and Catherine share their experiences with young Italian boys pleading with them to take them back to America for better opportunities. Charles explains the lack of industrialization in Italy influenced many people on the other side of the Atlantic to pursue immigration to the United States, including his own parents. Catherine shares the story of her mother's immigration process, which made me think of a woman described in Umbertina, Christina Musi, who wanted nothing other than to stay in Italy, yet was forced to take her children to America to be with her husband. Catherine's mother wanted to stay in Italy with Catherine's newborn sister. However, due to her fear of crossing the Atlantic by boat, however, her husband, Catherine's father, eventually influenced her to meet him in America by threatening divorce. Charles recalls the Irish immigrated first, and then the Italians followed shortly after. Jewish businesses became overtly popular, with different stores lining the streets and vendors with push carts. Italian American culture in day-to-day life is well described, with kids running down the streets playing and messing with vendors as people shopped and went to work. However, during the Great Depression, unfortunately, many of these stores went out of business and people began to move away. As Charles described these memories, I could only think of Umbertina's story of her life after immigrating to the United States. Additionally, the working conditions described by both Umbertina and Charles are concurrent. The videos and images provided in Italian American are exactly what I visualized while reading about the markets and pushcart vendors and the poor working conditions in the book. Living conditions during the Great Depression as Italian American immigrants was also very clearly outlined by Charles and Catherine. Packed homes with entire families living in one small house or apartment were common, and Catherine recalls her mother, her father, aunt, uncle, and 9 children all living under one roof. Babies were born at home, and worries of properly feeding everyone was common. Once again, there is a blatant connection to Umbertina's experiences following her immigration, as she lived in an attic with her husband and 3 children. It is also explained in the book how families even lived in hallways just to seek shelter. I thoroughly enjoyed being able to find connections between real Italian American immigrants stories and Umbertina's. My visualizations while reading were proven to be accurate, with pictures and videos shared by Charles and Catherine Scorsese. It is important to remember these hardships immigrants face as they journey to America for better opportunities the industrialized country brought them.
All right, I'm now going to talk a little bit about Feeling Italian by Thomas Ferrero. The article begins with the acknowledgement that many people may believe that the strong cultural ties of ancestors immigrating from Italy may have ended because people have integrated into American culture. This article is written from the perspective that the United States is multicultural and that there are many Italian Americans in positions of power and seen throughout the country. The author explains that he has chosen to study artifacts of Italian culture in order to determine what the cardinal traits of the Italian American ethnicity may be. He mentions iconic depictions of Italian American culture, such as The Sopranos, in other books, movies, paintings, videos, etc. An interesting question is posed. Why does American Italianness matter in a post-ethnic, gender-liberated, transnational, racially utopian United States? To feel Italian is firstly, to be Italian and to have Italian feelings. And secondly, to feel that one's identity is Italian, bringing about a sense of cultural belonging and helping people to still feel Italian while living in America. Peasants first migrated to the United States from south and east of Naples as transient laborers. Going through hardships and being ostracized for their different heritage made the Italians truly feel like Italians, bringing them together in a more united front. After World War II, Italians began to boom and bloom in the United States. Finally, in the 70s and 80s, Italian Americans claimed Italian culture as their own and were seen in depictions across the media. The author explains how Italians felt little anger or angst against the Americanization of their Italian culture, giving examples of non-authentic pizza and pasta restaurants and dramatized mob films. It seems that the Italians were okay with and honestly happy to be shown in the media and have their presence be seen and appreciated. The Italian mystique is a concept that is explored throughout this introduction. The author talks about how this sense of mystique comes and goes as the Italian identity moves throughout the cultural landscape. There are many unanswered questions of Italian history. Ferrero explains that the goal of the book is to analyze the intersection of culture, idiom, and artifacts, which present a version of the history of Italian Americans. It is an introduction to Italian ways of feeling and ways of feeling Italian in the United States. Family values, prejudice, economic mobility, social history, and more are explored throughout the lens of the Italian American.
Okay, I will be presenting Italian American Ethnic Identity Persistence, a qualitative study. The study was conducted by Catherine P. Alessandria and colleagues. So the article defines ethnic identity as a dynamic, multidimensional construct that refers to one's identity in terms of subgroups within a larger context that claim a common ancestry and share one or more of the following elements: culture, race, religion, kinship, and place of origin. So the study explored ethnic identity through 3 questions. The first is, does ethnic identity persist in second and fourth generation Italian Americans? The second question is, what is the process through which ethnic identity develops in Italian Americans from childhood through adulthood? And lastly, how is Italian American identity persistence and salience in post-immigrant generations shaped by individual and social factors, such as Italian language competence, peer groups, family interactions, travel to Italy, and the college years? As far as methods, this study used a qualitative approach. And then in terms of participants, there were 18 Italian Americans. 8 of them were second generation and 10 of them were fourth generation. There were a total of 12 females and 6 males, and they all ranged from ages 22 to 35. In order to collect the data for this study, the researchers conducted interviews. These interviews took place both in person and on the phone, and they ranged from anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 hours. The participants were asked a variety of questions regarding demographic information, family immigration history, and the influences and experiences that relate to ethnic identity. The first set of findings are about the persistence of ethnic identity. Italian American identity remained persistent across generations, but certainly varied between them. This persistence is affected by an individual's relationship with the immigrant generation and experiences with acculturation. The next finding is in relation to the awareness of Italian ethnic identity. All of the participants were aware of their identity to a certain extent from a young age. The second generation participants were aware from birth, while the fourth generation participants became more aware around elementary school. In terms of ethnic pride, it was present within all of the participants, but definitely stronger for the second generation individuals. And then moving on to influences on ethnic identity, the study identified 6 influences. The first is that monoethnic Italian Americans had stronger ethnic identities than mixed ethnic Italian Americans, regardless of their generational status. The second influence is family ethnic socialization. The study found that grandparents play an extremely important role in later generations' formation of an ethnic identity. Third, college experiences, including language classes, lack of ethnic dining hall food, and community organizations, influenced identity. The fourth finding is about peer interactions in college. Participants demonstrated a stronger identity when being romantically involved with another Italian or Italian American, interacting with the Italian community, and interacting with Italian international students. The fifth influence on ethnic identity is travel to Italy. Those who traveled to Italy felt like a stronger connection to their heritage and definitely demonstrated more interest in learning more about their culture. And lastly, the sixth influence is language. The second generation participants were more fluent in Italian, which results in a greater sense of ethnic pride. Alessandria and her colleagues concluded that ethnic identity is not something that is stable. It has its moments of ups and downs in which individuals can feel more or less connected to their ethnic backgrounds. In terms of future research, the article suggests exploring the effects of mixed heritage on Italian Americans, as well as the salience of ethnic identity in different age groups besides young adults. It also suggests that research should be done on a larger variety of college students. So this means studying commuters, those that live on campus, four-year university students, as well as community college students. Additionally, comparisons should be made to different ethnic groups, and identity should be studied from a lifespan or developmental perspective. There's certainly still a lot of research to be done, and further steps that can be taken to better understand ethnic identity. Overall, the study provides an in-depth explanation of the development, the influences, and persistence of Italian American ethnic identity. However, the sample size of 18 participants is relatively small, considering there are over 17 million Italian Americans. The findings of the study may not be completely generalizable to all Italian Americans.
I know I talked previously a little bit about Umbertina during the short film. However, I just wanted to provide a short summary of the entire book. Umbertina takes a feminist perspective following three women as they struggle with their Italian identities. The novel begins with Umbertina as a young woman pondering what life would be like outside her small village, Castagna, ruled by constitutional monarchy. After marrying a successful man, Serafino, and deciding to move to America for greater opportunities for her sons, she realizes she isn't built to be a traditional American woman. She is strong and independent, something that is frowned upon in both Italy and New York. While her husband works on the railroad, she begins to sell freshly made pizzas, which just emphasizes her drive and helps her begin to feel a connection again to Castagna. Her business begins to thrive, and she brings 5 more children into the world, including Carla. On her deathbed, she recalls the bedspread that was given to her when Serafino and she married, that she had to sell to a social worker to get the life she was living now, which emphasizes that no matter how long she had spent in America, she would never forget Castagna. In part 2, the novel follows Carla's daughter, Marguerite, who is struggling with her sense of self, just as Umbertina once did. She travels to Italy in her early 20s and meets an older poet, Alberto Morosini, where they marry and have 2 daughters, one being Tina. She becomes restless and unhappy with how her life and marriage have unfolded and has an affair with a writer her own age remaining in Rome. The final part of the book covers Tina, Carla's daughter. While living in New York, she learns her mother has passed away in a car accident and flies to Rome to be with her family and grieve. In the midst of all of this, she learns she's pregnant by her American boyfriend and undergoes an illegal abortion. After spending time with a New England man named Jason, she runs off to her great-grandmother's hometown, Castagna, where she meets a relative of a man that once loved Umbertina. By far the most amazing part of this book, in my opinion, is when Tina visits the Statue of Liberty and the Immigration Museum, where she admires the exact same bedspread Umbertina had brought with her from Castagna to New York and sold in order to better her and her family's lives. When Umbertina initially immigrated from Castagna, she brought with her rosemary with the intent to plant it so she would always have a connection to her home. After reuniting with Jason, Tina and him become engaged, and she visits his family home in Massachusetts, not far from where an Italian ship, the Castagna, was shipwrecked, and she plants Rosemary. Umbertina was a book of overcoming hardship, family, and connection to Italian roots. I thoroughly enjoyed each parallel made with all three parts of the book and was captured by the stories of immigration and establishing an identity as an Italian American.
Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.